Hey, good morning, everybody. Kale Casey here, your information officer, one of the information officers with the Alaska team. We have people behind the cameras ready to take your questions for the second day of Break It Down session. I'm here with our Deputy Incident Commander, Tom Kurth. We'll get to Tom in just 1 second because I know you're curious about the containment stayed at 61%. Acreage only grew just a little bit down here in the southeast corner to 32,304 acres with 724 personnel assigned. We do want to remind you that the best way you can support the firefighters is with stamped postcards and signs and preventing a new fire. We do not need a new fire in the area. No campfires. If you're out recreating, please prevent. That's our big message for the day. Tom Kurth is the former Chief of Fire and Aviation for the state of Alaska. He's had an entire career in wildland fire. Tom, take the stage.
All right, thank you, Kale. I'm going to pull my face mask down as it's fogging my glasses under these lights here. So if we have a new audience here, we're going to backtrack just a little bit here. So we're the Alaska Interagency Incident Management Team. We're a contingent of about 80 people with subject experts in things like finance, operations, planning, information, all those various sections that we put together a plan in every day. And our job was to relieve the Rocky Mountain Basin, or the Great Basin team, number one there, who had 2 weeks of outstanding work and did the heavy lift here. And they have some well-deserved rest coming up, so we have stepped in to pick up what's remaining here in this particular fire. So let's just take a quick look here. And this fire here, this black line represents our containment line, which means we expect no movement out of those areas there. That's a 61% count, right? However, what's left right now is some of the more difficult terrain and more problematic uncontained line that we'll be looking at and trying to get to what is a full suppression strategy here. So that is these red lines here, and that is in this northwest corner. Our values at risk certainly are the Glenwood Springs area. This is well populated, heavy duty structures, and certainly values at risk, a lot of value here. So making sure that this little pointed area and this uncontained line doesn't come around us in this condition here while we see weather coming in that's hotter and drier. These fuels dry out. And so fuels, weather, and topography, that's what we're looking at all the time. And we want to eliminate the risk that this can come around in this area here. Also, down here on our southern end, again, this is problematic line. It's up in high country, steep, and very dangerous for our firefighters to operate in. So we have to do risk management, risk evaluation, and mitigation of some sort, identify those things and make sure that it's safe for our fires to go in. So that's going to take some time because this area has been real resistant to control there. So these are the areas that we'll be working in. And then up in here, this is where suppression repair will take place. So we're building on that with our agency administrators who give us direction regarding what those standards are. And people are certainly sensitive to that, so we've gone in and put fire lines separating the fuel from the active fire edge. And so now we have to go in here in some format, and we have to make sure that we don't have any washouts, or we try and put it back so that it looks like it's stabilized, and make sure. I know the soils are very sensitive around here, so we'll be taking care of that, and we'll bring some heavy equipment in here. We'll take direction from our agencies, and then we'll focus on that until we get the entire perimeter in suppression repair status there.
And Tom, real quick, well, to break it down for folks at home, when you see these maps and you see that hatch line,
sure.
Right, that's a specific big line, right?
Right.
That's our bulldozer line. We have several of those big bulldozer lines. Sometimes they're primary,
yep,
and sometimes they're secondary. So once that area is cold, then those big bulldozer lines, that's exactly what Tom was nailing. And we want you to understand at home that break it down, that the suppression repair often starts out here where those big bulldozer lines are no longer needed because this whole area is cold, but that you, the public, all the recreationists want this to not turn into a four-wheeler trail for hunting, to not turn into a recreation road for Jeeps, and want it to go back to that standard, right? Yep. And that's what the forest hands Tom and the incident commander, Norm. They review it with everybody on the team.
Sure.
And they go out there and get her done.
Yeah, just to tag on to that, in a full suppression approach, which means we try and minimize the acreage here. These lines here, which is the fire perimeter's edge, we're usually going direct, and that's our first alternative. So in we go right on the fire's edge, and that is certainly dependent on fire behavior. We like flame lengths less than 4 feet when we're doing something like that, and that certainly isn't the case when these fires are moving with a wind behind them. And so these secondary lines or contingency lines are built. You can see them up here, certainly protecting Glenwood Springs along here. And so that is in case we can't go direct, and then we step back to these contingency lines, and maybe we go indirect, which is a strategy that you may have heard in where we're burning out these fuels between the fire's edge and the contingency lines here. So that's what these cross marks are for, and that's what Kale's referring to when we'll step in and start we'll bring suppression repair into those areas. And that's heavy equipment oriented along with our crews that'll do the touch-up work in there.
It's kind of a neat partnership, isn't it? Because we bring in, for the folks at home, we bring in private contractors with excavators.
Right.
There's not many fire excavators that the forest has on hand, right? We contract with folks, we do this professionally, but then each one of those operators has one of our trained firefighters, a man or a woman who has a certain qualification who can work with that equipment. They're called a heavy equipment boss.
Exactly. Mm-hmm.
And the bosses, so now we have a private sector, forest fighting sector working together. And one of Tom's roles has been to kind of do the COVID mitigation to make sure that everybody from the private sector, from our agencies, from all of our fire family, the Green Pants Nation, which we all are, which you're a part of when you help your neighbors, when you help us, are safe in this operation. How'd that COVID role go?
Okay. Before we leave the fire, though, we'll get right back to COVID. These spike camps that are out here, Coffee Pot Spike, Bear Ranch, and one that's very visible down here, No Name. Those are how we have crews out there, and you can probably see those if you're driving down the highway that activity has taken place there. So now, as Kale is referring to in our COVID mitigations, this is a big part, or our number one objective is always firefighter and public safety. And so this season here, not just protection from the fire, but it's also protecting the public from introducing COVID in any form or fashion here. So the wildland fire community has had a huge planning effort when we recognized this was going to be an issue well back into March, I think it was.
Yeah, and I think our first meetings were even February. As soon as it was getting to be pandemic, right?
Sure,
the team, you started to head it up for the state of Alaska.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And I remember being on a call in late February thinking, oh my gosh, with COVID, we're going to need more tech people.
Right.
We're going to need more camera people because we're not going to have the big community meetings.
Yeah.
We're not going to have those huge outdoor meetings or the trap lines at Safeway and City Market. We're not going to see 10, 15 residents around a public information officer like the old days.
Yeah. And so our firefighting environment is not necessarily, COVID preventions are tough in that because we're very labor intensive. We're very public oriented and interfacing. Our briefing areas, we like to meet with our firefighters regularly, and so we very early on recognize, well, this is going to be an issue along with our ballooning wildland fire management problem that we continue to have here and certainly are seeing this year all across the U.S. And so the planning effort that was originally on sort of a regional basis where we looked at, well, each of our tools, whether it be a helicopter or engine or a crew or a team or whatever, and mitigations were built for each one of those. And so extensive plans were already in place very early on in the season. And in my case, which was up in Alaska, I was put in charge of running the COVID mitigations there, or the COVID planning there. So we take that as our foundation, and then we build it specifically for our facilities and our environment up there in Alaska. And then we get all of our firefighters used to what our mitigations are and get them in place and get them trained, and so that we can successfully go through a fire season. So it was a good effort, and I think it's been paying off, So.
Yeah, and that's why you're seeing we're doing the virtual meetings. Yeah. We have the crews spiked out. Right. Wheels go out to the crews instead of crews coming back to the caterer. And we're curious if Al or Emery has seen questions from our audience, because part of this is engagement, whether it's on the live or rebroadcast. Please post your questions, your curiosities. We know a lot of folks have questions about when Coffee Pot Road's going to open. That's always one of those challenges. because we have big heavy equipment moving in there now with the suppression repair. We still have mop up and patrol. When Tom said we're comfortable that this isn't going to move, that's also because we have hundreds of firefighters right there working it day in and day out. Just because it's black doesn't mean that there's not crews there. They're all up and down the trail. Today, Roosevelt Hot Shots is inserted in here to work on this, but we're not taking our eye off of anything. So Coffee Pot Road is going to be one of those, we'll message very loud and clear when we know it will be open. When you see exceptions in the fire family, it's usually because of livestock or critical infrastructure like that. So if one rancher gets an exception for their livestock, that doesn't mean that it's open for hunting or outfitters or anything else. Just want to make sure that what we do for one, we try to do for all, and there are a few exceptions there. Great. Anything else in the audience?
So the Eagle County Sheriff did post a really great comment to remind people that prevention is key and that there is a statewide fire ban. So we were working closely with the Eagle County Sheriff. Main comments are on that Coffee Pot Road and when it's going to be open and who has that authority to open it. And also, I want to touch base on that. The walk around the fire is not for this video, but that operation
Right.
brief that'll come out.
We do have an operation video every day. We tend to get into talking about things, and our main goal with Tom was to divide up in your minds that we have two simultaneous operations for the rest of the incident. The first part of the incident was all firefighting, really hardcore firefighting. Now we're into two parts, what Tom explained, the trouble areas, and then our suppression, and that is just going to continue to grow. Every single dozer line gets GPSed in as it's going in. We collect it minute by minute. The GIS crew has it always contained in a file so that we know we can go right back in. Things don't get lost out there on the landscape, so you don't end up with some chunk of dozer line on your beloved landscape and your favorite hunting spot off your favorite road someday that you're like, wait, they forgot this one. And part of the reason why they want it done while we're here as a Type 1 team, because you don't just keep getting Type 1 teams forever. There's only a few in the nation. We're honored and lucky to be here. We're grateful to be part of your family now. But at some point here in the next 14 days, we're going to be sent either home or to another fire where a community like yours was threatened. And then a smaller organization will come in, and it just gets harder and harder for smaller organizations to deal with all this different coordination for the repair of the COVID mitigations, the communication side.
Let's talk a little bit about our specific mitigations and how it applies to the fire here. So, I mean, your standard mitigations that we have, which are social distancing, wearing a mask, sanitizing our high-touch surfaces, those are things that we're trying hardest to incorporate. And then we have some specifics for our own firefighting crew. We do have virtual employees out there, so they're oftentimes our high-risk employees that are out in a virtual environment and feeding into us, and so they're a big part of this. And then we have employee screening on a daily basis, so what we encourage is taking a non-touch thermometer and looking for symptoms, which typically might show up in a fever above about 103 degrees, so we're very cognizant of that. We get marked when we've had our temperature taking, so that is a big part of it. And then we have this concept called module as one. And so that begins really as a module of one, which is taking care of yourself to make sure that you're healthy and you're ready to go fight fire. And then that works into possibly an engine crew. So there's 4 of you inside an engine who are all taking care of yourself. And amongst your 4 engine crew members, you have a certain amount of trust that everybody's taking care of themselves, nobody has signs and symptoms, and so therefore they have a module as one. And now that crew might be working with another engine crew, or you can start with a hotshot crew or something similar. That's 20 individuals who all have to build a certain amount of trust and integrity amongst themselves so that they're self-reporting. And so this builds and builds and builds until we have what is a module as one of an entire organization. So we all have our trust, respect, and integrity regarding our, our module, that everybody is self-reporting, everybody's taking care of themselves, and everybody's reminding, put your mask on, separate 6 feet, or do what we need to do to take care of ourselves. And that strategy has been working for us. So it's been a good approach, because again, we're very labor intensive. We have kind of hard scrabbled employees out there. We're labor intensive. This fire alone has 800 individuals on it, 13 crews, 60 engines. And so that's a big, that's a big management issue where we're all interfacing with each other. And so again, our trust and respect and integrity is a big part of this out there.
Yeah, thanks for that, Tom. Any other questions from the audience? Okay, great. Tonight, 6 p.m., Glenwood Springs Community Meeting. That'll be virtual online. We'll start to space our community meetings out a little bit more time in between because we'll be doing the live feed daily. So your questions, keep bringing them, please. Again, prevention is the key. Let's keep a new fire out of this area. The fuels are tinder dry. Rain has been very spotty, and we appreciate your help. One Green Pants Nation. Thank you so much.